Dan Williams made a deal with a demon in the middle of the woods one night. He kept that promise for years until he met the love of his life. Then he found out what hell truly was. Folks, my name is Joel Brashear, and I am, among a few other things, an Appalachian storyteller. I heard this one when I was probably 10 or 11 years old. It stuck with me for a lot of years. I was probably too young to really understand it at the time, but I call this one the Green-Eyed Monster. Dan was a good fellow. Everybody in town liked him, and he had a real pleasant disposition. He never missed work at the mill, went to church most Sundays, didn't have a drink too often. The only problem with Dan was he couldn't find him a girl. Now, he'd date every now and then. He saw a teacher over at Pine Top for a while, but that didn't last. He even dated one of them midwives for a while, but she had moved back to Boston, so that kind of didn't last neither. He was still happy. You know, he was living a good life, had a lot of friends. In fact, one night he was over at a friend's house having a little gathering. Dan wasn't much of a drinker, but this night they pulled out the moonshine, and Dan had probably a few more pulls of that than he should have. Instead of spending the night, he decided to walk home. The path to his house was through the woods, and it was dark. He had a lantern with him. About a half mile from his house, that lantern gave out. He started cursing himself for having a few too many drinks and cursing himself for not having enough fuel in the lantern. And about that time, he tripped over a stump and hit the ground. As he was lying there in the dirt, mad at himself, a green ball of flame shot from the ground. And there stood one of the most vile and hideous creatures Dan could ever imagine. It was 8 feet tall. Cloven feet, clawed hands covered in black greasy fur that just oozed pus, scars all over its body. Giant head with teeth that jutted out, random angles, a mouth that stretched all across its hideous head. If this wasn't a demon, Dan didn't know what one would look like. Dan Williams, I am here to eat your soul. Dan took to praying. I mean, he didn't know what was going on, but he knew he was in trouble. Lord, please save me. Please, I'll do anything. Please. Anything? When the demon talked, it sounded like the choruses of hell just singing it, Dan. It shot right through his soul. Anything, Dan? Anything. I'll do anything. I swear, just let me live, please. Let me live. I don't want to die tonight here alone in the woods. Swear, Dan. Swear you will never tell a soul what you have seen in the woods this night. I swear, I'll swear anything you want me to do, I'll do it. You just tell me. Not a soul, Dan. Swear you will never tell anyone about me or what you have seen. I swear, I swear. Very well, Dan, but you must be marked. About this time, Dan opened his eyes and he saw those teeth widening out, and it clamped on his shoulder, and the pain was so intense he didn't even know what to do. It only lasted a second. He dropped to the ground, his arm shot to his shoulder, trying to hold the blood in. As he lay there, he heard the demon kind of chuckle, and a huge ball of green flame shot up, and it was gone. Dan was able to crawl back to his house by dawn and laid in bed the next few days, healing up. His shoulder healed, but the rest of him didn't. There was something wrong. He'd been marked, cursed maybe. There's a blackness on his soul where happy-go-lucky, friendly Dan wasn't there anymore. He was downtrodden, defeated. Something was not right. He was like that for a long time. Till one day, he was working downtown, and across the way at the rail station, he saw this girl. She had hair long, silky, black as coal dust, skin white like dandelion fuzz. And her eyes, they sparkled in this green emerald color he couldn't describe. He couldn't explain it, but it called to him. He found out her name was Verdelia Lee Stone. She'd just been hired as the new nurse at the town clinic. Listen, at first sight, Dan was smitten. He had it and had it hard. Well, they got to talking. The good thing was Overdelia had it for Dan too. They courted for a bit. Before long, they was married. And before you know it, they had 3 kids running around the yard. Dan got hired to run the town newspaper, and Verdelia was the head of the clinic. They'd built a good, strong life for themselves in pretty short order. And yet, Dan couldn't kick it. It was still there, that spot, that blackness in his soul. It would creep in. Some nights he'd close his eyes. He couldn't shake seeing that thing. He took to drawing it. He'd take pencils and ink from the newspaper and hide off in his study, trying to get a good copy out of his head onto paper. He thought if he could copy it and have something he could look at, the vision would leave his brain. It didn't work. Most of them he burnt, but if he got close, he'd keep it and kind of file it away and hide it. After a while, he started whittling. He thought maybe paper wasn't enough. He had to have something he could hold, something he could touch. So he started carving into wood that hideous face. He became obsessed, slacking off at work, slacking off at home. All he could think about was that demon. One night, it got especially bad. Old Dan got into a bottle of whiskey. He was in his study, drawing again. He'd had a few pulls. Didn't hear the door creep open. What in the hell are you doing? Dan put down the pencil and looked up. There stood Verdelia. She could see the drawings on his desk. She could see the sculpture he'd been carving before. Dilly, I can explain. It all makes sense. Dan, I want this awfulness out of my house now. Dilly, you don't understand. This happened before I met you. I can explain it. I was in the woods. No, Dan. No, just listen. I was in the woods. I'd been drinking and I fell and this thing. No, Dan. No, Dilly, listen. I was in the woods and I fell, and it was a creature. It was a demon, and it said it bit me, and ever since then I can't get it out of my head. But together, I think me and you, we can beat it. If we just, I think the two of us, we can beat it. You swore, Dan. That shook him. He looked at her, and he could see in her eyes something had changed. Something was different. There was anger there, but there was hurt too. You swore, Dan. You swore. Dilly, I didn't say anything. You swore, Dan. All of a sudden, a ball of green flame shot up from the floor, and where his wife once stood, there was that hideous demon. The stench of hellfire filled the room. Those awful teeth jutting out. You swore, Dan. You swore. Dan looked at that awful, awful demon, looked right in its eyes and realized those sparkling emerald eyes that he loved about his wife so much were the same emerald eyes, the same color of flame that he remembered in that demon. Just then the door creaked open a little farther, and 3 smaller demons walked in and flanked that big one there in the middle. No. Dan realized those 3 demons had the same eyes as that big one. The same eyes as their mommy. No. God, no. You swore, Dan. You swore. And they were on him. Folks, that one's called The Green-Eyed Monster. If you like that one, won't you give us a like and a share in this video? Let more folks know about what we're doing here with these stories. We sure like to share them with folks. Now I'll be back real soon with another one, so make sure you stick around for that. Till then, You be safe out there.